welcome back to my channel of an everyday life of an Aspie. If you landed on my page for the very first time, I welcome you all basically, and I'm Aspie, which I share my everyday journey with Aspergers Syndrome, OCD and the like, along with basically doing some mental health awareness series versus also just everyday topics of everyday situations that we may come and face and struggle with some tips and advice and just some pills of wisdom based on my training and life experiences along the way. So no further ado guys, basically what I'm hoping to talk about today is, as you can see from the title of this one, it's going to be Aspergers Syndrome and relationships, helpful Aspergers, which basically, as many of you may be questioning or wanting me to do a video based on this, even though I may have done a few of the relationship series versus the dating series with people with Aspergers Syndrome, especially my life story about it so far in the piece, that even though basically with all this entailed of the tips and advice that I'm going to share with you all today, basically hopefully we can learn and educate from one another, something new from me while having this Aspergers Syndrome especially, as well as understanding more of your BF or GF that may have this as well as a whole, not just, typically with their condition of Aspergers Syndrome. As you know, that I'm just going to say, or going to go with the flow with the person I'm currently with, as I said before, basically, who I'm with. Yet I'm not sure it's safe to say, what our status quo is at the moment, if I'm dating or not, basically, with this particular someone that I've shared, basically, briefly to who he is. You guys may know him, basically, but at least for now, like, I keep trying to learn, but get to keep this private. Most of my relationship quo or whatever it may be private, and not to say as much, in the hope of that you'll understand my reasonings behind it, even if you want to know my deepest secrets and fears versus whatever it is. But there's some things that I'm learning now that hopefully while I'm addressing to you all this, that we need to just respect one another. I've had a few relationships in my time, good and bad, as I shared basically. Some of them has been short term, some of them has been long term. The question people may be thinking or is asking of this, is it difficult to have a relationship or be dating someone with Aspergers Syndrome? This is a tough one because many of people that I've been talking to on certain pages right now, be it whatever it may be, basically, that have different answers to this based on their own life experiences, dating or in a relationship or being on and off dating or whatever it may be, But to be honest and frank with you all, yes, it can be challenging for many of us on that spectrum. But then again, for me included, from what I feel and see and face, it can work like any other relationship with a neurotypical versus, neurotypical, just people without these conditions that I'm sharing. But in a relationship with someone who has Aspergers Syndrome, basically, to me, it can be stressful. So number one, sometimes when we communicate as such, it's for me sometimes, but not all the time. I do get misunderstood or heard or even misinterpreted those 3 M's that I mentioned briefly about people with Aspergers Syndrome to what I'm trying to say and to how or what I say it as, and then I'll have to either try to repeat what I'm saying or we'll have to rephrase it, even though, like I said many times before, I have to engage my brain before my mouth or vice versa, engage my mouth before the brain. I do sometimes often have a communication delay or a communication breakdown depending on the situations, be it whatever it may be. I do have my meltdown stages, as I shared so many times before, of what I go through in my life, regardless what comes at me. And sometimes that with that entail that now and again, many people tend to just look at me and tend to, go from here on in thinking, this is not always the case or what have you, but then again, this is just me, how I go about it, on this. I'm starting to communicate, as I said so many times before, a lot more better than I have though. However, even though sometimes I try to make sure, regardless of my mind racing before my mouth or mouth engaging before my brain, however, and how or what I say, basically, I do basically share what's bothering me, basically, or interest me either depending on my moods. However, even though sometimes now and again, despite the bouts of other mental health conditions I'm suffering from, sometimes I'm trying to now, as I said so many times before, stand down and actually make a stand to what I'm against and whatnot, especially to a degree that if something doesn't sit right for me, I feel I need to basically just say it, and but then again, I feel like it just gets thrown back at me in a sudden force, basically, and I have to fit into their model or their, expectations, what have you. I feel, especially when I've been in my past relationships, regardless that I know for a fact that, everyone's different and to how they, go about things, but it doesn't mean to say that regardless what, children see in their adults, how they treat their mums or dads or vice versa, husband, wife, or what have you, doesn't mean that the kids should follow suit. They should be able to know what's right, what's wrong, what's appropriate, not appropriate to a degree. Okay, it can also be difficult for the other person who's an NT, if I was dating one, or has that NT mindset. What I mean by NT, if you haven't followed me for a long period of time, what I mean there is, in short, is the word neurotypical. That you're fully concentrating what's going on because you're worried that it's going to go wrong, but then you have no clue or to what they may be saying. It can be difficult to ask the questions or try to talk face to face while trying to process every information that has been said and given to you. Okay, sometimes basically when that happens also, we need to be looking at the person that's obviously talking to us, and then, like I said, we self-absorb into the thought of concentrating more on what's been said, not the body language, sometimes, or vice versa. It could be just basically the body language and not what they're saying, but then again, we need to be careful of the body language that we all are sending or receiving to one another, so it doesn't cause misinterpretations or misunderstandings and misgivings. So that's one of the tips. Number one is basically looking at and basically the person and try and cipher out which is the right body language and cues, even though, as I said before, many times before, some of us with Aspergers Syndrome or Autism or the like basically do have troubles reading body language and body cues of what they're trying to show up, because as we know, some people can be really good at hiding their feelings and emotions up to what's been said and done through their body language and that. Okay, and number two, another issue to address here is basically my meltdowns, okay, or just meltdowns in general for people with Aspergers Syndrome, depending on what we go through. Sometimes with me, how I go through my meltdown stage of my signs, if you need to know about it, if you were dating me, okay, or dating anyone else, some may face palm themselves to the point that they're constantly hitting themselves, while they're frustrated due to the sensory overload sort of thing. So sometimes it can lead to self-harm. They'll keep, hitting themselves. Or another part is basically they're rocking back and forth sort of thing, head banging against the wall, tearing their hair out. This is due to sometimes the partner may be lack of their knowledge or understanding to what is causing the meltdown, how it's causing it, the triggers of it, self-awareness. They're not self-aware of what's going on, vice versa for us, even though, many of them misinterpret meltdowns, as I said so many times before, as tantrum, which clearly it's not. Then it's the questions of why it's happening, what's causing it again, like I said, the triggers and causes. Number three, touch. I'm fine with being hugged, basically, in a way. Okay, there's a formal way that I like being hugged. Kiss on the cheek is good, sometimes on the lips. But then again, there are some Aspies that doesn't like that aspect of being touched for a lot of reasons. However, when having a meltdown, however, some may come in a hurry to actually hug us or touch us. But I want to address this. You don't have to do that at all. No, no. What you need to do is just let them be while they're having that episode of their meltdown. Maybe, like I said in one of the videos, take them to a quiet room and actually, let them calm down in their own way, be it, listening to calming music or just laying down or whatever it will be that's causing them to think. Because obviously the opposite effects, if you did touch them, basically will make them worse, as well as the situation that they may be in that led to that meltdown stage. Even though it can be emotionally draining, seeing them do what they do when they have these meltdowns and, all these sensory overloads and whatnot. But don't forever force them to stop having the meltdown. Just let it do its natural, release of doing it for that person to actually calm down in their own way. Similarly, with some other people that may do bits and pieces in this that may have similar, suggestions here. Also, number 3, another one is, as I said before, sensory overload. For example, coughing, sneezing, loud noises. Okay, for me, this stopped my train of thoughts dead in its tracks, and that it's involuntary and not knowing when it will come and go or come and arise in any given situation. I may have a change in my mood state when that does happen of my sensory overload, depending. It can be a roller coaster ride of emotions, from happy to sad to angry to, to about angry and snappy. People may question me, why am I moody? You're not moody at your partner, and your partner not know what or why is this happening, so you tend to, basically think to yourself, well, what can I do to actually do about this? My advice here is just to stick it out and let them come back to normality on their own terms when they're ready, when they have these meltdowns or sensory overload periods. Similarly, again, maybe when they have these sensory overloads, again, maybe take them into a quiet room and maybe let them do their own thing, whatever it may be. Number 4, arguments. Some of the Aspies will start to mellow and forget and chill out what has happened. When it comes down to certain arguments that has arisen between years, some may just constantly just switch back on to what actually happened, because some of us will remember facts, figures, terms of events, good or bad, and that, as many people might, depending on their memory spells. But then again, it's not quite so often. So then again here, it's just flashbacks and memory recall sometimes. Number 5, obviously this goes for everyone, not just for people with Aspergers Syndrome, having our own space and time for ourselves. Distance from our partner can be really good sometimes, depending how long we're having that distance call-off period or whatever you want to call it, when we're distancing away from ourselves. This allows us to have time for ourselves, doing what we want to do when we want it. And, at least now and again, it will give us time to enjoy ourselves being alone and actually, for a time, and being able to self-reflect, rewind, and actually, maybe if the time allows us, if it has to be, to self-discover more about ourselves. Number 6, misconceptions of people with Aspergers Syndrome can't love anyone. This is a real common denominator here, that many people think that people with AS tends to not know what they're talking about, they not know how to love and all that, but in all honesty and reality, people that has Aspergers Syndrome, as I said so many times before, they are empathetic, they are understanding, they are loyal, they are actually loving. It's a lot of, I hate to say this, a lot of bullshit that many people may tend to have that misconception in them about people with AS don't know how to love, or don't know what love is, or can't love anyone. We can be attracted to anybody, or somebody, not in the conventional way that maybe you'll show the way how you love us, and express to us. just relax with us, to go with the flow, to how we show how we love yous, regardless if some of us ain't the romantic type, and some of us that are. Sometimes some of us can be to the point really extremely go overboard of it, but then again, it varies from time to time. So therefore, it depends on the individual of the person with Aspergers syndrome. Number 7. Last but not least, hopefully, research the subject on dating with someone who has Aspergers syndrome, and don't worry too much if they don't buy any gifts or woo you. Okay, I can be a romantic in a normal sense, trying to fit in the social norms myself. Yeah, it has been hard, and trying to understand what is acceptable and more. Sometimes with me, when it comes down to if I was trying to be a romantic, or when I'm, basically, thing, sometimes some people may think dating me, maybe buying something that's of use and practicality that can be used forever on end. And basically, I found with me especially, that's always the case when it came down to not just dating wise, but with my parents, whenever they've been doing that for me for many years. But anyway, right, being with someone with Aspergers syndrome, to end this, can be difficult yet rewarding being with them at the same time. As you can see, as I said so many times before, of their characteristic traits, they can be loyal, loving, kind, probably too honest and upfront. They will always be there for you in times of need. They are empathetic. They'll be stepping out of some situations, out of their comfort zone, just to be with you. And that regardless of stepping out of our comfort zone, we may say something that you're struggling with from a different viewpoint. So therefore, two heads are better than one, as they say. So even though some of us may do black and white thinking versus, maybe think more in depth to what's going on of that particular problem. Also, basically, if you're dating someone with an ES, give them at least their own space of privacy, and give them time, basically, if they have their meltdowns and their sensory overload, basically, because obviously time is of the essence, even though you need to be patient with that stage when that happens. Basically, least touching involved, unless, you can ask them nicely, do you want a hug or anything, but be aware when it comes down to their sensory overload or their meltdown not to do it though, because like I said, it makes the matters worse. Sometimes it can be, unless it'd be really stressful, basically, for them, and the emotional events, if you did, a lot of touching. So less is better than more, so to speak. When they have their sensory meltdown versus basically their sensory overload, be sure to know the differentiation between the two when this is happening. Learn about it, basically, and also learn about the person with Aspergers syndrome when dating them, basically. Know what they like, dislike, and everything else, basically, and especially when it comes down to this meltdown, sensory overload stages, basically, to actually maybe find a place for them to cool down, or what have you. And understand, basically, they may not be able to show their emotions or be able to read the body language of cues themselves. I understand also that some may not show their emotions or affections towards you. Don't be offended if they don't, because as I said, they'll express it in their own other unique ways. If you want something, maybe lay down some heavy hints to them, and whatnot. Even though sometimes with some of us, people with Aspergers syndrome, we do like to have hints and stuff. But then again, sometimes with me, it's a wild guessing game with me if it was with a lot of hints along the way. But sometimes some Aspies are like that. But these are just a few little tips here and there for when you're in a relationship with people with Aspergers syndrome. Give me the like for thumbs up for support. If there's anything I missed and you feel for me to comment or just comment below of the ones that you think is of relevance to you, basically. Feel free to also subscribe to my channel, because I'm hoping to do it on the daily or weekly. Feel free to also follow me on Twitter and Facebook, AspieAnswersAll. Feel free to also just share these videos around, so hopefully we can use these as educational resource tools, or whatever the purpose they may be for you, to share them along with your family and friends and whatever. So in all for the do, guys, thanks for watching. Until next time, have a great day.